Hey everyone, this is Adam from the Little Music Podcast. This is last week's episode. If you want to listen to this week's episode, it's currently available right now on our Patreon. So if you want to hear that, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/littlemusicpodcast. But if not, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Little Music Podcast, a podcast made by independent music artists who kind of know what they're doing, for independent artists who kind of don't know what they're doing. I'm your host, Adam from Keepitinside.
And I'm Kevin from KA TRO.
All right, so how is your little music thing going?
Going well. The numbers have been slightly going down now after a bump that happened in January that I cannot explain. I'm at around 1.5 million monthly listeners, roughly.
Okay.
I'm happy with it, but it went down like 70,000. So I don't care right now.
So much.
Yeah.
But also, I guess in like this scale, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. How's your little music thing going?
Currently at 123,000 monthly listeners.
Solid.
It's gone down, I think, a little bit from the last time we spoke. But
God, I can't remember. How long ago was that?
But I am starting to release, I think, I have released a song. I'm just thinking about when this episode airs.
Oh!
It'll already go out, I think, after I release the first song.
Incredible. I can't believe it won a Grammy.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah, post award show.
Oh, so won an Oscar too.
Yeah.
They got do we do
Was that the
Oscars?
No,
We did Grammys, but I'm like,
They all do it around the same time.
so is it already done?
Yes.
What? What's next?
I mean, we're releasing like after February is almost over. Like all the award shows happen in
They're
like
done?
January.
Oh my God.
All right. Our producer is telling us to move on. The theme for today that I wanted to talk to you about, because it's been on my mind for a long time. I mean, especially looking at my numbers right now.
I mean, it's something that's always been on my mind too.
Yeah.
Like, it's been ever present.
Oh, so you know already what I'm about to say.
Yes, I read your mind. Just saying.
Have you ever thought of giving up music as a career? And I thought of this. Technically, we did, but I was thinking about it because I think almost every step along the way of my career path as a musician, I saw periods of like stagnation and periods of like dramatic decrease, where it got me thinking like I don't have any other skills other than making music. It's like maybe I should.
I feel that.
I need to stop doing this so that I can, work as an employee somewhere else.
Well, as they say, the whole thing, you get a real job sort of thing.
Yeah, because I know that's reliable income and
Yeah.
it's more safe. And yeah, I've thought about it way too many times. I remember living in LA. When was that? Like 2018. I made the move.
I remember that around that time. Well, because I think I was at the apartment that I was at last time. So that matches up.
Yeah. So I remember moving there because I'm like, all right, this is the time. Like, this is the next step to go to LA.
I can't believe you'd made that move, actually. Like, that's crazy to think about.
I honestly, it was like an opportunity showed up and I was like, okay, so I can maybe live around LA and then, because rent in LA is also expensive. So I'm going to live around there, not directly in East or like in Hollywood or anything.
Oh, God.
And I was like, maybe by proxy of living in that area, I can get like all this creative juice from all the other artists that are living there. And I can work with more people and thrive more.
Creative juice is that's just drugs and alcohol. That's what you'd be consuming if you were to be stuck there.
Yeah, if I was invited.
Yeah.
I don't think I was ever like the amount of times that I met up with collaborators is close to zero. And that like mostly because I was way too focused on doing my job or like going to part-time work, and I was maxing
What were you doing
out.
there?
I was doing I worked at a boba shop.
So that was the boba shop
That
era
was the boba
during
shop, yeah.
LA. Oh my god. I kept thinking that was all in San Diego still.
No.
That's crazy.
San Diego
You worked at a boba
was-
shop in LA. My
Yeah,
god.
yeah. I mean, traffic was insane. In people and cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, the job was fine. It was just that I always needed money. So I'm like constantly maxing out my hours so that I have enough so that I
I
can
thought you were about to
invest
say
in my
maxing out your
music.
credit cards. I'm
No, no,
like,
no.
I'm in so much debt, living the dream.
That's a separate problem, but I just wanted to reinvest in my music. But then I found I was like so tired physically from doing the job for like looking back, it's not that long, but it's like around like 8, I think max 8 hours for the day.
I mean, doing a service industry job, anything that's minimum wage labor, it is very tiring. That's been my existence the past like almost 4 years.
Yeah, but then I was doing that whole thing and I found that I wasn't doing music at all. I wasn't creating anything. I wasn't networking.
Yeah.
And every time I got home, I'd be like too tired to creatively output anything. So I was just watching. I consumed a lot of anime. I will say that's like,
Where you've built all your knowledge.
yeah, where I built all of my anime knowledge and I got really into isekai, the genre.
Well, there's some like psychological projection because it's
Yeah, it's like I don't want to be.
I don't want to be in this
world.
life. I need to die and then come back as something else right now.
Yeah, so then it's not that I wanted to give up
Yeah.
like music, but I kept having this feeling of this is not viable. Like I'm not generating anything, and I know that even if I'm like living in LA, I don't have the energy to even like go out to meet people. It's been a feeling that I've had for a very long time. What about you? I don't want to talk too much about myself.
All right.
but-
No, because it's like, unfortunately, I think about it even to this day, like, because it's just
Really?
yeah. Well, because for me, it's funny that you talked about not necessarily like the resources of like to sustain it. For me, the fear it comes from it's just all fear. Like I know it's all like it's just more in my head than it is more my material like surroundings.
Yeah.
But so much of it stems from I don't know how much I could sustain like my art, like my music itself. Like I have this fear about like my creativity running
Like
out.
output? Or,
Yeah.
yeah. So you might run out of songs. To
Yeah,
write.
I kind of fear that. And I think that's where that fear comes from. And like, that's where the need of like, I should just stop because I keep fearing this. And I realize I've been able to push through enough that it's not as big of an issue. But I think probably like 2-3 years ago, where it was kind of like at its peak, or maybe even just 2 years ago, you know, what would get to me was just like, I don't know how much I could sustain my creativity.
Yeah.
And then I would hit this wall, and not necessarily a writer's block, but once I would finish a project and kind of get out of my system, I'd be left in that kind of same pit that I think a lot of artists feel after you finish like a big project. It's almost like a postpartum, not to make it sound so dramatic, where it's just like I had a child, you know, but you know, when you baby like a project, it's like so much, you put all that energy, and then you couple that with it doesn't go exactly how you want it to be, both the project or most likely the numbers about it, you know.
Yeah. I feel like with that example,
Yeah.
it could go both ways, right? The project can go really well and do really well.
Oh, and you can
then
still have, yeah.
Your feeling is I can't make something like that again.
Yeah. And I've been there many times, but I will say the shining light in that is that I've been there enough times and gotten out of it that I've like, okay, this is now a familiar spot, and I've been able to get myself out of it.
It's interesting that you think about it even to this day.
Oh,
Because I feel like with the numbers that you're doing now
Yeah.
and like the streams that you're pulling in now, for me, looking at it from someone not at that stage, so I just feel like you have resources to just like, you know, even if you feel like you're running out, you just take a break.
I guess I just think it's because my mind is always in this like go, go, go mode. Any pause, and again, that's what I'm trying to unlearn and get to more healthy boundary where it's just like, I'm trying to not have to feel like this is like some insane, like there's a timer that's like ticking down. And I think that has come with time and like, it's come with more mindful practice. Like it's something I realize that you can't just like think you're gonna find that peace. Like
Yeah.
I've been really practicing like, oh, it's okay to take these breaks. It's okay to feel like your output is slowing down, because it's like a lifelong sort of thing. And that's helped me kind of come out of that where I'm like, okay,
Right.
now I don't need to feel like I'm giving up or want to, because it's like, it almost sounds like ridiculous to phrase it, but I'm like, what am I really giving up? It's like, I love doing this. I don't mind putting in all this time. There's not really something I'm giving up anymore.
Right.
It's just me fighting and working through the anxieties that come in this like larger picture, And it doesn't help that there's like the material reality, the material condition, because I'm thinking about like the part-time job thing. It's like,
Yeah, you did one too, right? You're
still
doing
in
one.
it, which
I keep
is
forgetting that you're still working at the grocery store.
at
The
insert name
the
of
fabled
insert
censored-
name of store here. I don't know. I don't think that's gonna work. I'm gonna cut that part out.
No,
Yeah.
leave it in.
All right, I will. But no, I mean, it's funny even to myself. I mean, it's funny to hear it from you and coworkers who know of my music.
Yeah.
And they know it's like super serious. And the ones that are like, the like couple people who are like aware of like, oh, these numbers are like, like this is crazy. Like they all say the same reaction of like, why haven't you left?
I feel like with the coworkers, there's a little bit less of like credibility behind like, oh, why did you leave?
Yeah.
Why didn't you leave yet? Because they'll say that to me. When I had like 70,000 monthly listeners, they're like, oh, you're famous already. I was like, only 70,000. Think about how many people are in this world.
Yeah.
Only 70,000 know me. And they pay me less than a cent every time they stream. I don't think that makes me establish like a living wage using this, just that. But so your coworkers have like less of an idea of what it means to have enough so that you can decide not to work there. And I remember specifically where were you at? You're like at 800,000 monthly listeners or something like that.
And are you talking about when I came
Yeah.
when I came to you and I was
You're
like,
you were complaining about the job, and I was like, why haven't you left yet?
and it was funny because during that conversation, I think I approached you not only about just venting about the job, but I remember approaching you being like, I'm thinking about leaving soon. Or like, and you looked at me like I was
Like,
insane.
what do you mean soon?
Yeah.
Now. Why don't you do it right
And
now?
I think my favorite memory was how you had said, when you had hit 600, that's when I was gone. That's when I would be
That's when I would have
gone.
said
Yeah.
I like 100% would have just left to just focus more on the
Yeah.
on the music, especially with I guess I kind of understand your perspective of it.
And mine came from like viral success. Like
Yeah.
and I say success in the sense of like I had no idea what the trajectory was gonna look.
Yeah.
And I was knee deep in like watching this line
Yeah.
just keep going up.
Very conservative take. But I totally understand. And I think that's coming from being a little bit more frugal and very cautious. You're setting these like protective barriers just in case something doesn't go as good. But do you think you would have a certain threshold for like when you would decide like, oh, this is it?
Like I'm at my limit sort of thing. Like it's hard to say if because I don't know if I even want to verbalize that or put that out in the world.
Okay.
But no, I'm not.
You don't have to.
No, I don't mind even thinking about that because I'm like, I think for me that limit would have to be when I hit that like creative wall completely. And that's why I'm able to kind of realize that it doesn't really exist because I see and look up to like a lot of creative people and, the sort of like long-term careers that they've had where it's like, I don't know, I look at like my favorite authors and it's like, oh, they've been writing for God knows how long and they're still writing to this day. And, what would be like, when would you like throw in the towel?
I think this is like my last stretch. So
Oh no.
like I'm going to be putting out
Yeah.
like one every other week just to see how that
Just see
tests
where that
with
goes,
growth. If I'm seeing noticeable growth, then I keep going.
Yeah.
If I don't, then I kind of like reduce the amount that I work. That's it.
But you'd still be doing music, right?
Yeah, I'm still doing music.
That's
It's
I
just
think
not my
that's-
main priority.
I think that's like the bigger takeaway is like at the moment right now for both of us, we're able to put this as our full priority because
Yeah.
we're really like, I don't know, not just only we believe in ourselves, but it's just like we want to like keep nurturing this and we've yet to see the full extent of it. But I think our definitions of like that giving up is, all right, music is now gonna like take it like a slightly lesser priority. We're still gonna do it. We're still gonna like keep creating. It's a lifelong thing that we love. I think that's like the fundamental like less in there, but it's like it's just going to become a smaller priority.
Yeah. So now we're going on a micro scale of like, all right, so we kind of know our limits for giving up as a whole.
Yeah. You set the standard of like, cool, I'm going to give up when I feel like a failure.
But right now we're doing music.
Yeah.
We're all in music. We love what we do and we feel like we're going to do it for the rest of our lives. So in music, how do we establish when to give up a project or a song or something like that? Do you have like a method where, because I have like a lot of songs in my project templates that are just undone.
Yeah.
Not a reference.
I was going to say, it's like, oh.
Not a reference to one of my songs or anything. But do you have like a system in mind that kind of says like, oh, I don't have anything more for this?
It's kind of funny. I feel like it's when I'm like, it's when sort of thing. Cause it's like when you're in the making it sort of,
Yeah.
You just know when that song like is going to be good.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it.
Such a good piece of advice.
I know. It's so nebulous. What I am trying to say.
Imagine me, empty head, and just like coming up to one of my favorite producers, Castro.
Yeah. And I just said,
How-
when you know,
how-
you know.
when you know.
You know.
You know when you know.
To distill it down is just because I have the same thing. Like I have so many songs that are undone too. It's like, I think last time I said of like over like 250 songs, the amount of projects I have like 1,000 like project files. It is like 1,000. It's like, so I'm batting like a 250 average, which is good. I mean, that's a
25%.
25%,
people who don't play basketball. Oh,
basketball. Didn't even get the right sport. My batting average in basketball.
My God. Yeah. Let's cut that out. Cut that one out.
I'm hitting.
You can't have that in there.
I'm hitting those 3-pointers, and they're going in the outfield.
Oh no.
What was the question?
You said you have like a 25% completion rate for a song. Wow, my ADHD brain remembered that because I was so embarrassed.
Well, to explain it so it doesn't sound as nebulous, it's just when that song just stays as a 4-bar loop and I'm just so frustrated with it's not going anywhere. And that's what I will say though, it's when I move on. That idea, I feel like maybe that's just like a hoarding tendency where it's like you never delete anything. I think that's like a generalized tip I would give to anyone. It's like, don't delete any ideas.
Just keep it.
Just keep it. You never know where it's going to go.
Yeah, don't delete anything was something that was like hammered into me.
Yeah.
When we were going to the producers club and we worked for like the entire hour. There was like a sample challenge and everybody worked on something for a whole hour. And at the end we would present it.
Yeah.
And one of those times I was the ideas didn't go at all the way that I wanted.
Yeah.
So I deleted everything and then I was starting from zero and then the time ended.
Yeah.
And everybody was going around saying, like showing their stuff and it was beautiful, majestic, one of the most technical productions I've ever heard. And then they come to me and then they're like, oh, it's like Musicians Club president. Let's hear what you got. And then I always be like, I don't have anything because I deleted it. And I don't know if you remember what was that guy's name? Whatever. But he was just like, he was so astounded by the fact that I deleted something. I was like, we don't delete stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, you never delete stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like an unwritten.
Why would you delete it?
It's become like a very unwritten, but serious rule.
Yeah.
Like I see it pop up so much of like, don't delete old songs. And it's like, they really are like just scrapbooks and like, they're memories of like where you are. And it's like, it is fun to revisit. And for me, I've had experiences where those ideas come back and I'm able to reuse them, which is always an experience that I like. I mean,
also on the other hand of like not having enough, so you're just moving on from it. Sometimes I have trouble with not finishing a project because I feel like there's more to do. So I have like tons of them that I spent months and months on after it was done.
Yeah.
Just because I thought it needs a little bit more, like the mixing needs a little more work, or, oh, maybe I can add some more things on here to make it sound more interesting.
What's been your most like challenging project?
I think the one that comes to mind a little easier is Caught Up. And that was like all condensed into a couple weeks because
Yeah.
it got semi-viral on TikTok.
Well, it's kind of surprising that you're saying that that was your most challenging, but because I'm thinking about challenging when I think of like time, but I think for you, like for how like quick it was, I can see that
I
being
had to
its
go
own set
through
of
like
challenges.
all the different stages of anxiety to, usually I'll take a long time, but then I'm just like revisiting it, but knowing that I have to release it soon.
Yeah.
So that was what I was dealing with. I think the biggest trouble was making sure that all the beats hit, like all the different moments I wanted to be in there. I wanted it to be quick, and I wasn't asking anybody to mix or anything. So I was doing all of that myself as well. And just making sure that all of that was done in a timely manner while I was at Big Bear at a different writing camp for somebody else.
Well, I was going to say also, you're trying to like strike while the iron's hot sort of thing.
Yeah,
like, pull
and
out
that
cliches.
scared me.
Yeah.
What was your challenging project?
I think I don't know. For me, it's so different where I look at challenging, but the hyperpop remix for Zombie was definitely, I think, my most challenging song because I think you knew a little bit about it, but ever since we had made the original version and we sped it up for fun, that was where the idea of like, oh, I want to make.
And how long ago was that before
that was
release?
Like 2020.
2020.
And then we released the hyperpop version in 2022. Yeah. So that idea was in my brain for 2 years. And it wasn't that I just had the idea. I tried so many times. More than once. Like I've tried more than I've told you how many times I've tried to make this remake or this remix because I just didn't. And it was so emotionally hard for me because that was where I could really see the limits of like my own ability. Because every time I would try it, I would like take the song and be like, all right, I'd start with the stem. Like I have the stems. Like we made the song. Like I put it, it's like I was the final one to put it together with like the mix and master. Like you sent me your vocal stems. I did the beat. So like I had everything to work with. And I just could not either come up with something or the idea I would have would be so half-baked, I would give up on it. And I would be all like, maybe later, but I never.
But it wasn't like a give up and don't ever work on it again.
It was just like the
time.
frustration, but it was just the challenge of it because I was just like, why can't I do this? And then I think what was the breakthrough was after consuming as much hyperpop music within those 2 years, finally like studying all the people that I like was looking up to. Because at the time, I think like we had just like started learning about this like new genre, even though it's not really a genre.
Yeah, I mean,
more of this sound,
learning of it.
Yeah, and then finally all those influences, and I think just also 2 years of like practicing and like just making other music. Like my skills, like from when we made the OG version to like I think that February of like or January of like 2022, where I was like able to like make it in one day. It all came together, and I was very proud of that.
I do have some questions that I got together.
So where do they come from?
Well, I gathered them from like different people
Okay.
that have asked me questions along the way. So this new segment that I'm coming up with right now
on the spot
right now is a segment called, well, I don't know if it even makes sense anymore, but Fix It or Move On was what I was thinking, because just the theme of giving up on like our music stuff. So
a segment that only works within this episode.
Within this episode, yeah, we're gonna have new segments every single
episode.
So the first one I have is kind of what you said before. Yeah. I wrote a 4-bar loop that I like, but I don't know how to finish. How would you tackle that?
I think for me that I have a lot of fun doing is whenever I even have like a 4 or 8 bar loop, my favorite thing to do now is to render out the entire thing. And it's with everything, whether it's just a melody or whether I've already started like a 4-bar loop that has like percussion, melody, bass, like it can kind of stand on its own, but it just stands as a loop. I render out the whole thing. And my favorite thing is just to do like kind of do like my old like hip hop sort of like background, time stretch it, pitch it down. Like just literally playing around with that, speed it up, slow it down.
So experiment with the 4-bar loop in a different.
You take that whole loop. Like that's my like solution to that. You just take the entire damn
and
thing.
Then tried something else.
Yeah. And I've had songs like kind of come out from there. I mean,
Yeah.
do you have any like sort of tips
For
for
my
a
4-bar
loop?
loops, if I'm listening to it over and over again, I get lost in like one train of thought and it never leaves there. Especially if it's based off of something else. I'm only hearing the other person's melody. So usually I let it sit about room temperature, let it dry age a little bit. I let it sit for like a week or something before I revisit, or like even revisit any of the loops that I made. And then from there, I sometimes have a different perspective on how I could take it. Or usually I'm in a completely different state of mind and I add that element to a different thing that I'm working on.
Oh,
So
yeah, you take
sometimes-
the idea and put it to the next thing.
Yeah, sometimes it can be like a soft song and
Yeah.
then have like a very energetic moment, like those types of things. I do like your idea though. I don't think I usually do that where I print it out and then
Yeah.
like time stretch and, mess with it.
Well, I almost treat it like I made a sample, or like I'm starting with a sample now, because
Yeah.
it pulls me out of it, because I'm like, cool, I'm just starting again, but I already have like something to like build a song
Yeah.
with. Kind of like, as I said, it's like a very hip hop way to approach it.
Yeah, I think those are pretty good points to hit. And we can do one more.
Yeah.
But do you think it's,
What question do you think?
you could choose one of the questions. I sent it to you right now.
I think I like I feel like the mix question, because
Okay.
I feel like that's one.
So this one,
that's
was
like an
another one.
everlasting sort of
Yeah,
like.
so I'm mixing
issue.
a song. I'm mixing a song, but every time I listen to it, there are more things to fix, and I'm never happy with it. There are small pops and distortions too, and I don't know how to fix it. What do I do?
I mean, I feel like for you, like you have way more experience like mixing, because you do it on all fronts, like the vocals and like the song itself. Now,
Yeah.
the full package. Like what do you? What's your like thing when you're like not happy with the mix?
A lot of the times, people say on YouTube, like, don't mix your song while you're producing. But I think it's really important to think about the mix as you're producing, as
Yeah.
you're making things.
It's
'Cause
hard
if-
to separate that. I'm gonna be honest. Like they say, don't mix and master.
Yeah,
while
it's-
you're doing
it's
it.
really
I'm like,
hard.
How?
But
like,
it
I have my
comes
mastering
to-
chain on.
I wouldn't mix too hard.
Yeah.
Like while you're producing, because you might take away things that you won't know to put back
Yeah.
in. So just general mixing tips, separate it between producing and mixing. After you're done producing, you feel like the whole thing is
Yeah.
done. Stem it out and then have like a separate project, or just make a separate project. So resave it, save
Yeah.
as, do your Control Shift S and save it as a different project and say you're going to mix that. That way you're separating it. Any changes you make, you can
Yeah.
go back to the first one. But in terms of like, after you're doing it for a certain amount of time, you just have to know when to stop. And you have to get to a certain point where it's like, oh, this is good enough.
Yeah.
And also in like a business perspective, like as an artist perspective, not as a mixing engineer. Of course, if you're listening to this as a mixing engineer, this might be a horrible thing.
I was gonna say, ignore this.
But as an artist, it doesn't matter as much. Because
Yeah,
there was one
I
thing.
can see that. Why
there was
a
one
mixing
thing that I
engineer would be all like, "What are you talking about?"
There was one thing that I heard is like, who are you mixing for?
That's true.
Are you mixing for other producers to listen to your song and be like, oh, this
And really
is really
admire
cool.
it,
This
you know?
mix sounds really crisp. Or are you mixing for a listener or one of your fans who don't really notice any of those things? So the question was, they mentioned there are small pops and distortions. Are they
Are
really that
Are they noticeable? Yeah. And also there's that bigger thing is like, again, I like that rephrase of it, because it's like, it goes back to, I think, a previous discussion, I think even in the last episode, where it's like, who are you making music for?
Yeah.
And in this case, like, who are you mixing this for? Because there's going to be, and it depends on the listener. I'm not trying to make this where it's like, oh, the listener doesn't care, but it's like, sometimes those pops and little distortion, all those like little imperfections that you think you hear, they're not going to see that as imperfections. A listener sees that as the entire song.
They're like, oh yeah,
Like,
this
oh,
adds,
that's part of it.
Yeah,
you
this
know?
is like the salt and pepper of this song.
Well, it reminds me of when I used to do like jazz band in high school. And they don't always say, if you think you're going to make a mistake, it's like, it's jazz. They're going to think that's part of the song. And I keep that same logic to like even my own music, where it's like, especially when I get too in my head of like, this mix is going to be terrible or something. And then I realize that it's like, I'm not even caring about mixes of the music I already listened to.
Right.
And I'm having the same approach where I'm like, oh, that was just part of the song. Like, I don't, and it's only until after I hear like an interview from them and they're just like, God, something went so messed up in that session. And I'm like, oh, that was not part of it. But then you realize like, oh, but that's actually what I like about it. Like that's part of the charm. So you start to realize that you're always going to be the biggest critic.
Yeah.
And it's like just shaping like, who is that audience that you're like playing this for?
Got it. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's my view as well.
Yeah.
If you have other questions, talking to the listener right now, if you have any questions or you're seeking advice just in general, you want to ask our
Like
opinion.
life advice?
Sure. Mostly music advice.
Yeah.
Or your like artist journey. If you need any help or anything like that, feel free to email us in at info@littlemusicpodcast.com, or you can drop a comment on whatever social media that you're
I'm presenting it
consuming
as if the text bar is right under me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just leave us a comment, send us an email, and we'll try to include this if this is something that all of you are interested in. But that concludes our episode for
I think that
today.
wraps it up.
Yeah. It was, I think it was a good moment. We had some good fun. Yeah, feel free to follow us on. Our producer told me to practice this ending closing section, and I have not. And I just get here and I just don't remember anything. But okay, let's reslate. You can follow us on any social media at Little Music Podcast. On Twitter, it's at Little Music Pod.
And you can find us on patreon.com/littlemusicpodcast. We would really appreciate, the direct support, and you can find us there.
Us individually, I'm at Keepitinside 2 on Twitter.
And I'm at AItsCastro, EYYITSKASTRO on Twitter.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.